Hello and welcome to Jian Batra's 15-minute FPL podcast, my podcast, and this is the Gameweek 19 edition. Before we get into anything FPL related, I would like to wish you a very Merry Christmas for those who celebrate. I hope you, friends, and your family have a wonderful time across the festive periods. And that you just enjoy it and you're happy and healthy. Best wishes. Moving on to FPL, I promised you that I would take you on my journey of the season and see how I'm doing and the guy who you're taking advice from. So, as promised, here it is. I'm happy with the start. I think Cole Palmer, regardless of what he does, the rankings are going to go past like 70. Unorthodox what he does. But yeah, I'm happy with this week. Another good week in a row. 4 greens on the bounce. So yeah, in a really good position with all the chips to a really, really strong second half of the season. Close out the festive period. Have a strong second half. Hopefully get a really, really good rank. Couple of things I want to talk about with this team, not my own team, but I think it could help you down the line. I captained Son over Watkins, and I was quite confident in that decision once I'd reached that conclusion. 2 reasons as to why I did it. 2 main reasons. One, the ceiling, and I think with captains you never want to really stray away from that theory of captaining players who have the highest ceiling. I think there's top ceiling players in this game: Son, Salah, and Haaland. No one can really touch them in that aspect. Maybe Sterling on his day. Others, but at the moment they're those 3. Watkins isn't as prolific as those 3, and he's a lot more consistent in terms of how he accumulates points across the season. A lot of 9s as opposed to Son where he got 17. And as such, especially given Watkins as a forward, it makes it significantly harder for him to reach the heights of Son and Salah. So with that in mind, I would be cautious when this situation arises in weeks, because it will, and I would captain the higher ceiling player, especially if it's mid on forward when the higher ceiling is with the mid, for reasons that you've seen this week. And the other thing is, I think you should really, in my opinion, and it really is just my opinion, you should try and win, right? You should try and win FPL, and if that is a stretch too far for you, then top 10k, and if that's a stretch too far for you, then top 50k. But you can most definitely achieve a top 50k rank if you've got the interest to even be watching any form of content. And when you have an opportunity to take on the whole field, and the risk really isn't that large. Like, what was the worst Watkins do? Is what I kind of capped him at 16. I thought even that's very unlikely. Like, okay, 13 points. Even if someone to blank and I was to lose 12 points in the whole field, so be it. I knew that, like, with my decisions later down the line, I could make it up. But to take a 12-point advantage over the whole field, when again we're trying to win it, we're trying to beat 11 million. Magnificent is fantastic, and then you keep building on that. So obviously there's risk associated, but I don't think it's large enough whereby like captaining Watkins is optimal. I think taking on the whole field in these situations is far more optimal, especially if you would like to do well. It's not a stupid risk, it's just a very calculated one. And I would consider that down the line when you start to factor in effective ownership for your decisions, because the more I play this game, the less I'm taking it into account. And I think you would benefit from doing so, because in reality, it doesn't actually matter. Just you're making your decision from a fearful state. And I think if you can start to discount for it, you'll see your decision-making process change, and you'll realize it becomes less fearful and far more analytical. And that's kind of something you want to do. Solanke, I've bigged him up for ages. And for those who were here about 6 weeks ago, I started to spread the propaganda, and he's obviously returned a hat-trick, so that was great. Not super excited because a lot of people own him now, but great nonetheless. I would have captained Salah if I didn't have double Arsenal defense. So, like, I expected him to do something. Gabriel's had a nice, and I brought in Bruno this week. I know a lot of you won't like that, and I thought Eric Ten Hag would finally get the memo and change the midfield structure and take either McTominay out of the team or make him play deeper so that Bruno can play his usual attacking 8/10 role. Unfortunately, he didn't do that against West Ham, but you never know, blessing in disguise. Maybe he realizes the issues of having Bruno deep when you have Mino in the side for the first phase to progress anyway. And maybe Bruno goes higher up for a game against Villa where you'll be able to hit them in transition, and having your best creatives far more useful than having McTominay with his running power, because you've got power in Haaland up top anyway in terms of like just general physicality levels. So that's that. And I still like the pick. Honestly, I think I'll give it like 1 or 2 more games, and if Ten Hag fails me again, then chop him. But otherwise, pretty good. If you want to see your team in that form, get all the AI recommendations, which again is flying. Then you have 30 days free as a Christmas gift and 30% off. So you have to go over to our website, Fantasy Football Hub, and just claim your gift. I can't recommend it enough. Between the points prediction tools, the team reveals, Like, you're getting insights from guys like Rich Clark, the best manager England ever had. You're getting the AI tool who's smashing it week on week. Even did last season. For the money you pay, I think it's a fantastic deal. I know it's fantastic. So we've got another toss up, and this is probably not as close, I think, as last week, but still a very close one. Son versus Salah. I would completely discount everyone. I'm not even interested in going against these two this week, because to beat both of these two would be exceptionally difficult. One's very likely to. So I'll start by telling you I'm very likely to go Salah. Before I came on, I did some fixture analysis in the individual matchup, and we'll start with Son. Why I'm not super keen, even though I like it. He's going to play on the left wing, I assume. If Richarlison isn't fit. I think Postecoglou very big fan of having Richarlison inside at the moment. Brennan Johnson, I was at the Spurs game today, and Brennan Johnson didn't look particularly comfortable. I have a feeling it's got something with a head injury he suffered, which is very natural. Obviously, like after an injury like that, just to maybe be slightly precautious of entering duels. So I can't really see like Brennan Johnson going back to play on the left, given the way the side's structured with the doggies penetrating runs, because the attacking dynamics wouldn't work as well. I don't think so. I think he would go keep Son on the left and keep Richarlison up top. He did say that Richarlison's minor injury, which he had to come off with, was fine. And with Brighton, I think it's very difficult to create chances centrally at the same volume you can against Burnley. I think you're going to end up attacking their flanks a lot, just given their build-up structure and the way you're going to transition off that. And then when you build, how compact and well coached they are within those central zones. So I think Son will be seeing a lot of the ball and therefore staying quite wide. Obviously, he'll be able to manipulate those situations into isolated ones where he can take on his fullback and then come inside as a result into those half spaces in goal scoring positions, shooting positions. But the origination of that will all be from wide areas. Not all, but a lot of it. We actually saw it in the Liverpool versus Brighton game earlier in the season, where they struggled to create centrally and they often went through the flanks. So I think that's what's really putting me off. It's just I know that Son is likely to stay fairly wide throughout the game. I think he'll definitely have instances where he's going to play 9 in the game, where like Barton's going to get hooked off. And that will be great for him against the line Brighton play and the style of football they play. But given Salah's going to have 90 minutes of a Burnley side, fast susceptible half spaces, Liverpool have had their struggles against the lower teams because they played low blocks, but Burnley will probably, especially considering they're at home and they just got a win, be looking to probably play in a slightly more expansive manner than the other team. And considering there is no one better to exploit them than Mo Salah. It's a weird, I wouldn't say it's a weird narrative to run. I think it's definitely logical. He's a very goal-hungry man, right? He's a very goal-hungry man. Going to AFCON for 4 weeks, going to miss about. I know he'll want to just keep up with the Golden Boot, and I can imagine the next having them drawn twice at Anfield to Liverpool and to Arsenal and Man United. They'll probably be feeling like they've dropped 4 points, as well as perspectives. And I think he out on some. So I'm expecting a really good performance there. I think you've got the nice narrative there, but you've also got the nice analysis and data to back up. I've watched a bit of Burnley, and they concede far too many chances in that half space, especially their right half space. Harry Wilson exploited it at times today, and I expect Nunes to come back into the side, which I can imagine is very good for Salah's, Liverpool's chance generation in general, and with the volume being significantly higher, I think a Hall's certainly on the cards. Brighton are a better team than Burnley. You can give them far more credit for being able to get a result against Spurs, all due respect to Burnley, and as such, I think it makes more sense to go for Salah. So for me, it's close, but I am going with the. On to the next point about how to bring Erling Haaland back, given a lot of us have sold him. I think it's a very, very, very simple decision. On the most part, you fade him for Gameweek 19. He does what he does. If all your mini league rivals are going to captain him, then so be it. Very difficult to get him back in. Again, there's so much rotation going on at the moment. Mentions the most efficient use of a transfer or a hit? Probably not. You can just get him in 20 and sell Salah as part of 2 free transfers. So for example, you got Archer to Haaland, Salah to Bowen. Bowen's got 3 really nice fixtures then. That's the move I'm personally planning to make, and I imagine that will be a very, very template move, rightfully so. Saves you a lot of headache. It saves you having Salah through the area where he's going to be at AFCON. And yeah, it releases funds as well, which you can spread. And we'll come on to, in another podcast, we'll come on to how we we shift back. Had a look at it, and not easy. Pretty difficult. An argument to wildcard Salah back in, but yeah. Everton away is not an easy fixture as well. They would have had a decent rest after the game today as well. Everton, they were probably a little bit leggy given the short turnaround. So I think with Haaland probably not even being 100% fit away, wait and get him for 20. And if he's not fit for 20, then so be it. We just take our 2 frees into the break and slice Salah at home to Newcastle. I wouldn't overcomplicate this, given a bit of a gift here. We need to have a discussion about this man, because this man could end up being a season holder the way he's playing. He is completely transforming position. He's already done so in the past, but he's taking it to a new. You can have whatever stance you like on his defensive abilities and off the ball. I don't think he's nearly as bad as people say he is off the ball, but it doesn't really matter, to be honest. Because look at that heat map. Look at the positions he's taking up. And with the creative capacities he has, the ball progression he has, the ability to find passes from pretty much any spot on the pitch, to create from angles that most couldn't even think of, it's just exceptional. He's the best in the world at it by a country mile, and it's fantastic for the bonus points. It's fantastic for assists, and it's also good for goals, given that he's starting to get into different positions. Now, Klopp, I think, is starting to change his role. I think Joe Gomez has actually been a really good facilitator for Trent to actually step into the pivot a lot more. He even played as a lone pivot against West Ham for a bit in the Cup. So you're kind of seeing the new Trent Alexander-Arnold and probably the evolved and better version. This guy's going to score so many points, without doubt. And I think this is where Liverpool's fixtures turn. I actually didn't like the Arsenal, Man United before that, because there were a lot of low blocks before that, and I don't think their attacking dynamics are well suited enough currently to beating those. But with Burnley, Newcastle in the next 2-3, I think, and the fixtures that follow, I think this is much better. So I really, really like him, and I think if you can get him in without too much sacrifice, I would. You can always get him in about game week 23, 24, wildcard him in. That's fine, but if you wanted to get him now, I think this is a very, very plausible transfer, given how good he is. I think from now, if you own him, he's pretty much season hold. So if you did want to go for a differential, because he has a far lower ownership than an asset of quality probably should, then I think this is very, very good. Should certainly be in your plans at least, and should be looking at a route to getting him in the near future-ish. I'm talking about like a 5-6 game week span, if not now. I know we've had a lot of Liverpool talk today. We're going to continue with that, and we will get off it, I promise. But we do also have to have a discussion about this guy, because I think, like I said last time, this is where the fixtures. Burnley, they suit him more. They'll give him a bit more space. The volume of chances Liverpool create will be greater. Newcastle the same, and they look very leggy at the moment. Newcastle will probably go with their stand like mid-block, high press, and if they do that at Anfield, I honestly think they're going to get hurt. Arsenal tried to do that today, and they got hurt to an extent. And I think in Newcastle, and the difference between Newcastle and Arsenal off the ball currently with the state Newcastle are in is huge, right? So they try and press Liverpool in that manner, and I don't think Liverpool really hurt them. I think he could really hurt them. These are the type of games which he exploits. Burnley away, Newcastle at home, Bournemouth away, all good fixtures which are stylistic fits for him. So I think if you got him, you have to keep him for at least one more week. At least one more week. Just give him this, and then you can reassess. After flip. I really like him. I'm actually thinking of bringing him in. Now, the last thing I would like to talk about is the defense, because people are dropping like flies. Cash injured after potentially being on a 9-pointer. Injured Southampton. Tsimikas injured long term. Lascelles picking up another injury. Botman, Shaw, you're not too sure. Livramento, rotation prone, etc., etc. Right, the backline's a pretty difficult deal at the moment. And this week, for example, which blocked a lot of teams making certain transfers, etc. So I am going to try and present to you what I think should be a template lock over the next few. Get to this and you don't touch it until about 23, 24. Saliba, Gabriel, double up on that Arsenal defense. I just don't see any reason not to. They are the best defensive, at least the best defensive system in the world. They are pragmatic, control-orientated, directed by Mikel Arteta. They have fantastic individual defensive players in Rice, Gabriel, Saliba. They have the athleticism, they have the height, the physicality to cope with pretty much any team. Now, White gets exploited at times, but overall he's been pretty good. And obviously Zinchenko, you could say, and would definitely be the case, that he's the weak link in that backline, right? But I think given that he's not going to be up against Salah every single week, you kind of have to account for that and be like, okay, it's fine. I'll accept that part of the risk just to have these two. They also give you the aerial threat. They've both scored, like Gabriel obviously scored this week, Salah recently. I think this is just a lot. It solves so many of your problems. You know you're going to get 90 minutes. You know they can both get attacked. Know that clean sheets are rare this year, and they're not for these two relative terms. So I think that's a lock double Arsenal defense. Pedro Porro looks unbelievable going forward. I was at the Spurs game, literally pressing at one point. He was the 9 and he stayed there for a bit. So impressed by that from an FPL standpoint. But yeah, him and Doggy again. It's not these players exactly, but it's a template about Trent as well. Also, you kind of plan as to how you can get him in. Pedro Porro, yeah, just good fixtures, and even without the fixtures, you've got the attack and return. So superb set pieces, open play, superb. Well, Chelsea got good short-term fixtures, so if you want to go for him or like a Malagusto, they're not too expensive. And with those four, in general, you're fine. You could go for like a more long-term option, Man United. I stacked Dallo there, but I actually quite like Anana as a goalkeeping option. People won't like it because you know, Man United, etc., etc. But go and look at the goalkeeper tabs and look how many points Anana has compared to the rest of the keepers. So something to look out for, because the fixtures are quite good and they're not actually bad from a defensive standpoint for FPL, especially because he'll accumulate saves as well. So I would try and structure your defense in that type of manner, at least for the short term. Maybe Trent, if you wish, double Arsenal defense, Porro, Gusto, and like Anara and goal. Because I know you're chopping goalkeepers, so that's something to keep in mind. And I don't think you really need to stray too far away from that. Like you have Newcastle defense, got a pretty tough run, and they have a good run after, so you can just sell them and then bring them back. You don't have too many issues otherwise, like in other places. Like you've got Salah, Son, Palmer, Saka, Watkins, Banky. You've probably got something like that. I don't think you need to deviate from that too much, at least not this week. I think if you have problems at the back, then fix it there. That concludes this podcast. So if you could please like and subscribe, we'd really appreciate that. You could follow Fantasy Football Hub and myself. Again, I'd really appreciate that. And so would the company. You could download the app that's in your best interest, and you could rate the podcast. Much appreciated. 30 days free. Here's your Christmas gift from me. Merry Christmas, and see you very soon. I wish you the best of luck for the next game week, and I will see you. Merry Christmas.